The labor force in Ostriv is pretty much the same as the arteries and the blood would work in your body. Without it, your city will simply not survive. So that's why it's in your best interest to utilize them in the best way possible, and with this guide, I'm going to help you to do that. So the first thing that you need to do is to make sure that you've got an ample amount of laborers in your city. So there's no indication or guide as to say how many laborers you need, but I would say that between 10 and 15% of your total population you can keep aside for laborers, at least with the initial stages of the game. It will increase as time passes, and once you've got the row houses, you're going to have plenty of villagers to help you out with the labor. But starting out, 10 to 15% of your town should be the labor force. Secondly, you can prioritize the work by pushing the wages of the laborers. Now, I don't mean the general wage which you get within the town hall. I mean that with each production building, you've got a button that you can select to increase the wages of those production buildings. So for example, if you do want to push the charcoal a little bit more, you can go to the charcoal pile and you can go to the button at the bottom to increase the wages for the laborers. Now, when you increase the wages on that specific production buildings, the workers will prioritize that as the first job to do, because obviously they're getting more money, so it makes sense to take on that work first. And they will always prioritize the best paying job to do those ones first. Laborers can only use carts that are stored at a cart parking. So obviously we've got two different storages for the carts. We've got the cart parking, and then we've also got the cart shed. Now with the cart shed, we do appoint carters, so they get a fixed role within the cart shed, while as for the cart parking, you don't assign anybody to control the carts. So it's a good idea to keep a couple of cart parkings out throughout your town so that the laborers will have some extra carry space to move the objects around, because your carters are going to have a completely different role and you've got to select them specifically to do type of chores. So the laborers that's walking around with the carts, they won't do the same job as the carters unless you assign them to do so. But I would say just make sure that you spread the carters out. Make sure that you've got a carpentry that's functioning properly to maintain all these carts as well. So you need plenty of metal parts and wood for the carpenter, and you might need to look at multiple carpenters once you exceed a population of 300. Make sure that you place benches and gazebos throughout your town. So the benches and gazebo, they act as a spot for resting for your laborers and for your workers as a whole. Now, for your villagers to rest, whether it's the workers or the laborers, they can go to the benches or the gazebos to rest. They don't have to go to the actual house that they stay in to get rested. So if you do spread out the benches across the whole of your town, you're going to always have your workers that they don't have to travel as far, or the laborers don't have to travel as far when you place the benches across the town. And you're going to obviously boost the production way more if you can get your workers to just stay closer to the actual production buildings. The lime kiln and the charcoal pile are the only two buildings that uses labor force exclusively. So in my opinion, I would recommend that you increase the labor wages for the charcoal pile as well as for the lime kiln, because you're only going to use the laborers. There's no workers that can go there. I believe you can assign the carters there to also drop things off, but you want to really push the labor force for these two buildings. So do increase the wages for that so that you can always be stocked with charcoal as well as with the lime. Although the lime is not as much of a pressing matter, the charcoal you do use for a lot of stuff, especially more towards the mid game. You're going to really use a lot of charcoal to do your iron production, all the items that you use for the iron, and as well as for the brickworks. You're going to use a hell of a lot of charcoal, so you have to make sure that it is always stocked up. In each production building, all the settings are by default not ticked for the laborers, so you're going to have to go into each of the production buildings and make sure that you tick the boxes for the workers to work by hand as well as by cart. Sometimes there's just simply not enough carts available to do the work, and you can't let everybody use carts because then you'll sit with constant maintenance. So it's a good idea to let the laborers work by hand and by cart to make buildings work most efficiently. And sometimes you just have to carry small quantities of a certain item, so that's when it really comes in handy to let your laborers work by hand. When you select each production building, they are by default set to assign 20 laborers if they need. So you've got to bring this labor limit, you've got to bring it down quite significantly. Otherwise you're going to end up having all your laborers fixate on one production building instead of focusing on multiple buildings to help your town grow as a collective. So there are many times where, for example, you do need a lot of laborers for the farms in itself, but then because you've got so many laborers assigned at a different building, you simply don't have enough laborers to do the job. So you've got to make sure to bring the labor force down by each building. I would say anything between 5 and 10 is a good amount of laborers for each of the buildings. You don't really need more than that. The only building I may say that you need more is the farm in itself. Villagers that stay in row houses are the excellent villagers to use as laborers, because the people that stay in row houses, they can't produce their own crops, and therefore they cannot sell it back to you, so they don't make any extra money from anything additionally. So what you can do is to place the row houses in a more or less a central point where there's plenty of laborers or jobs where they require laborers. So when you place the row houses in a central point, you're going to always have work for those people that stay in the row houses. Laborers gets automatically assigned if they don't have any other fixed job. They will be utilized as a laborer in the town to meet all the needs for your town. Laborers are very efficient in stocking your trading posts, so what I would recommend is when you do build your trading post that you only assign a manager and maybe one worker to your trading post, or your trading dock for that matter. So it is better to rather just utilize the laborers to stock your trading dock or your trading post with whatever stuff that you need or collect it from there, and then you can just basically increase your wages for the laborers, for the trading dock and the trading post, and then you've got a very efficient trading post to help you get everything that you need. But instead of just letting the workers hang out there by the trading post and they're not really doing anything unless you do an actual trade, rather just take them out of the trading post and just use the laborers. But as I've mentioned, just keep one worker there just for in case. Well, that's my guide for utilizing the laborers in the best way that you can possibly can within Ostriv. Now these tips I've learned this over a long period of time, but it's generally helped me to optimize my city and to make it grow into a very prosperous city. But if you did enjoy this and you like the type of tip that I gave and you like the type of games that I cover, please do remember to subscribe as well as press the bell notification so that you may get notified for any new videos. But thank you so much for watching, and then I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.